All right, in 2019, Old Blood Noise Endeavors released the Signal Blender. Now, the Signal Blender was spawned from the excess pedal that we put out before that, which was a distortion modulation pedal that you could put those effects in parallel. So we wanted to see how that would work with whatever effects you wanted to put in there in parallel. Over time, we got a lot of suggestions on how we could improve the Signal Blender. So where we're at today is the Signal Blender Stereo with 29 pedals. Jesse from 29 Pedals in particular had a lot of great ideas on how we could improve this. And this is where we wound up. This is a weird little section of downtown.
Uh-huh. It seems cool.
We've already agreed.
Oh, okay, no problem.
This is bigger than I thought it would be. It's cool.
It's a good spot.
What's the move here?
I'm gonna get a smoothie probably with like a peanut butter-ish. Go up against that, could just do a corner thing right here.
What's that?
When did we meet?
When did we meet? Okay.
I was trying to piece it together.
We probably met in person first at the Effector Market, or maybe at one of Julie's parties.
So, Old Blood Noise Endeavors from the get-go.
Uh-huh.
We embraced kind of the faults that I'm talking about, the noise, the perceptible things that people might not like about a signal processor.
I'm Isaac with Old Blood Noise Endeavors. Old Blood usually takes like a very kind of esoteric approach to designing things. We're always looking for more of a feelings-based approach, whereas like, you know, we have reverbs and delays where it's more of like, is this sound inspiring me? You know, are we having fun with it? Are we finding new sounds that we've never heard before?
Now your approach is very different, which is why working with you is so interesting. So for 29 Pedals, what's your...
I guess the easiest way to say it is like bringing a sort of like high fidelity recording console type of design mentality to the analog amplifiers that we use on our pedal board. So an input driver, an output driver, a fuzz, a boost, and an overdrive that are high fidelity devices, very repeatable, very not noisy, very like, you know, like high headroom, high voltage, high current drive, things that like will be low interactivity with other devices because they're kind of overbuilt, and sort of like provide a really strong hi-fi platform onto which you can then put your cool, interesting sounding pedals.
Jesse is very much more on the technical side of like, your frequency curves have to be correct. Your phase has to be correct. So like things that we like don't pay so much attention to are things that he very, very much pays attention to.
All right, what were the things that you wanted to improve on Signal Blender?
The things I noticed after living with it for a bit were I'm such a fussy user that if I didn't know you guys personally, I wouldn't have said anything, because I'm sometimes a minority use case because I'm a lot fussier than people are.
Gotcha.
But I didn't like the way the phase flips worked, because the output was flipped, and then the input had a switch where you could flip it back.
Yeah.
The original, the sends were flipped, and then you could flip the return.
Yes.
And on this one, we decided that the sends are in phase,
Right.
but the return still flips, or did we decide to flip the send? The return is what flips, right?
The return is what flips now.
Yeah, because it's like on a console, the send never has a flip, the return has a flip.
Yeah.
And I think that was just down to a construction thing where it just happened that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a nerd about absolute phase because of like my days on consoles. Like if a console output has a flip, that's considered really bad because everything should be absolute phase unless there's a switch to flip it.
Yeah.
And it caught me up when I was trying to put something in a parallel thing that then two things would turn on and off, and like it would affect the phase negatively. You know, like if I turned the pedal off or if I blended it in a different way, you'd have some out of phase signal coming back and it would sound really weird. And then the loops had a bit of phase shift in the low end. So basically, we can improve the low end a little bit if I tacked a film cap of 6.8 UF film cap across C4, which right now is a 10U ceramic. So when there's voltage across the ceramic, it could lose some shit. I like to put mod pedals in the blender because the blender throughput is the blender throughput was a shorter path that sounded a little better than the blend path on a lot of these pedals. So a lot of like cool sounding vibrato pedals or whatever don't necessarily have the best sounding clean throughput.
Yeah.
And so I always put them in the loop of the blender. And also because since the blender defaults to true bypass, it gets all that shit out of the way when you're not using it. So that way, like, my board is fully true bypass when I'm not using any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But then, you know, when you go to use the pedal, it's fine. It sounds good, you know, whatever. But I noticed it because the vibrato waves wouldn't chorus the same way at low frequency as they would at high frequency because the phase shift was out.
Yeah.
And so, like, the chorus would be a thin sounding chorus. So I called up Dan because he and I had been emailing about other things. And I was like, look, I love this thing and I want you to know I love it. But will you send me part of the schematic so that I can mod mine? Because there's a few things that I don't like about it.
You wanted to fix it, yeah.
And he was like, well, tell me what you want. You know, like, we didn't know each other well enough that he was really going to send me the schematic.
Yeah.
But he was like, well, I can tell you where the coupling caps are, and da-da-da. So, okay. And I got in there and I fixed it, and I was like, I made him a chart, and I was like, I got the phase response this much better between the two of them just by overrating some of the caps.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you want to go further with this? And I was like, and he was like, well, I don't know. I'll talk to the guys about it. And I was like, listen, if you ever want to do V2 of this,
and then
call your boy,
yeah.
and allow me the privilege of getting some of my nerdy, unnecessary, high fidelity bullshit in there. So what we're going to do is just measure really quickly what the voltage is across it. I tacked a film cap of 4.7. We can improve the low end a little bit. So over by that cluster of 4 electrodes. You know, between 300 and 100, it dips 0.04 dB. Purely because I want to have 2 of these on my board. And like, I'm sure it's fine in general, but I just wanted it for my own fussy self, really.
Yeah.
So it was purely selfish. I was like, I just want it to be different. You know?
Yeah.
And I guess also because it's like, I thought it could benefit from some of the stuff I like to do is just making the headroom super high. And that's a pedal that can benefit from high headroom, even though it might not seem like it, because you're going to be running so much other shit through it that you don't necessarily want it to ever run out of headroom.
Yeah.
So running that thing on bipolar rails and getting the headroom way up is going to like also make the blending better.
Yeah.
I was really excited that Isaac was able to stuff everything in there for stereo. I don't know if I was catching up with him earlier this morning, and I was telling him, like, when he and I had a conversation about it, when we started actually discussing the schematic, and we both were like, it would be cool if this could be stereo. I said it to me, and it would be cool if this could be stereo. Sadly, we could never fit that all in one box. And Isaac was like, it would be cool if it was stereo. And then we didn't discuss the stereo aspect of it at all. And all our other back and forths about it, the other meetings we have, it actually was never discussed. And so I figured it was just like off the table or whatever.
Yeah, the stereo thing was a challenge because with digital gear, stereo is just kind of like you create it kind of all in the processor for the most part. Whereas this, you know, an all analog signal path, you have to make 2 complete signal paths. And there's a lot of stuff in this that makes it sound the way it does.
And then just like 2 days before I flew out, I noticed in the email, one of the emails you guys sent, it was like, oh, and then we'll be talking about the stereo feature, and da-da-da. And I was like, I can't believe you fit it in there.
Fitting it all in there was a challenge.
And the new stuff Dan put in with the MIDI and stuff like that is so cool.
Yeah, so the MIDI stuff is neat. That is more Dan's area, but it allows you to switch, you know, the channels on and off whenever, you know, whatever order with your MIDI controller. So you can turn on, you know, clean in channel A, no B, or just B, or, you know, however you have it set up. It allows you, you know, kind of endless switching configurations.
The great things in doing this project with you is that you have a pristine ear and are not afraid to point at something and say, like, that's not right. We should probably fix that.
Yeah, I guess it just comes from the pro audio thing. Like,
Yeah.
you're just, I mean, like, I used to work as a tech at a studio, and people would find shit like that in channels on the console, right? Like, this channel doesn't lost low end for some reason. And they'd call you down there, you know, and some days you wanted to be like, there's other channels, just use it, it's fine. It's also like, there's an equalizer on the channel, just use the equalizer.
Yeah.
But people would be like, no, it has to be right. You know, and some of it is because we're going to do a recall, and if the channel isn't correct, then suddenly, like, which EQ was slotted in that, you know, because EQs get moved around the console a lot as things go out for service. So if suddenly you need to have a specific EQ in a specific channel, then you got to pull the whole console apart just to do a recall.
Yeah.
And that can be a nightmare.
Yeah.
So making sure that all of your, like, utility stuff and all your stuff that's supposed to be flat line level absolute phase is actually flat line level absolute phase gets you out of so many other problems, and also helps you, like, get back to a sound that you really liked, you know?
So with the stereo signal blender, we've got an A, a B, and a clean channel still. We've got independent volumes for each channel. And you've got 10 dB of boost on each channel. We have stereo input, stereo output, and stereo send and returns on both the A and B channels. We also have trail switches for the A and B, so you can activate trails, and whenever you turn off a channel, then your delay or reverb or whatever effect it is doesn't stop, which is nice. We changed the big arcade buttons for the phase selection to toggle switches, which makes sense, so you know, you kind of have the reference for what's in phase, out of phase. And we also added MIDI. MIDI in and MIDI through. So now you can control the signal blender via MIDI controllers. The stereo signal blender can be used as a mono signal blender. So in its default mode, you can put in a mono input and then have mono send returns and mono output, or stereo input, stereo send returns, and a stereo output without changing anything. In order to get mono in and stereo out, you have to flip a switch on the inside, a dip switch. That will allow you to go mono in, stereo loops, send and returns, and then stereo out. There's certain instances where you will want to be running stereo in, stereo out, but have mono pedals like drive pedals in your loops. At that point, you can use an adapter like this. It's a TS to TRS adapter, and it will be used on the return so that it's sending the signal to both left and right. The stereo signal blender is available now for $2.99 from oldbloodnoise.com and all of our dealers, so check it out.